What is going on, everybody? We are officially back. Mic Check Podcast in session. Sam, it's been a while. It's good to see you, dude. How have you been?
Doing great. It's good to see you too. It's been too long, but we have some playoff hockey to talk about.
Yeah, isn't it crazy that we're like at the end of the season right
We're
now?
there. We're
Like,
there.
I can't believe, at least for me, I guess I'm kind of more invested into the full regular season because my team kind of did decent throughout the season. But I mean, it's just fun this type of year because this is where you get like some of your early playoff games. Like you
hmm
just watch it, you get that transition into hard, fast-paced hockey, which I love. So yeah, no, it's super interesting to see what's been going on in the league. Uh, Ever since the trade deadline, too, it's been just key to track down which teams have benefited from it. Obviously, maybe some of the upper hand teams that we know are going to make it far into the playoffs, they've made some moves, and some of their guys you won't see their true benefit until we get into playoff style hockey. But these teams that are fighting too, I mean, they've made a lot of moves, and man, I mean, the board has completely switched in the standings on both sides. So I guess we can go flip the coin. Where do you want to start, man? Do you want to go Western? Or do you want to go Eastern?
Let's start in the East. I think it's the simplest one to break down.
Yeah. All right. So I'll basically give you guys a little reminder here. If we're looking at the East right now, it's a pretty much lock for all of the divisions.
Mm.
Whether obviously in the Metropolitan, it's Carolina, New Jersey Rangers. That's not going to change whatsoever. And then in the Atlantic, it's Boston, Toronto, and Tampa, and that's not going to change at all. So realistically, it just comes down to the wild card. And as of right now, the two spots are held by the New York Islanders and your Florida Panthers, which
Yes.
it's got to be pretty cool to start thinking about. They could be that last space in. I mean, if you look at the standings, though, right behind them are the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they're only 1 point back with one game in hand. And
Mm.
then, I mean, truly, if you look at it after that, it's Washington at 74 points, but they've played 72 games, same as the Islanders. I really think it just comes down to those three teams that I mentioned prior. That's the fight. One of those teams is not going to make it. I think it's going to be interesting hockey down the stretch.
Yeah, you think about just 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were talking about this is a 6 or 7 team race for those
Yeah.
two spots. But teams like Detroit have fallen off, Ottawa's fallen off after an impressive run, Buffalo's fallen off, and the Washington Capitals, I think, too, have fallen off. So those four teams that really had a chance earlier, just a few weeks ago, have hit a snag and just not been the team that they could have been coming into the playoffs. So we're down to three teams. I think these are the right three teams when you break it down. I think what the Islanders are doing recently without Matt Barzell, I think is sort of what their vision has been in the past, which is something maybe we should get into to start off is what the Islanders have done is pretty interesting. Now relying on Bo Horvat, Anders Lee, Anthony Beauvillier just got traded as well. So all these guys, all this change that they made now with Matt Barzal out of the lineup, it seems to be paying dividends, right? Because they're a tough team to play against, and now they're putting up goals. I mean, last night they scored 7 against Toronto. It was 7-2 win against a very good Toronto team. It makes you think, if they seem like the most playoff ready team out of these wild card teams, and if they get in, do they have a chance to upset a Boston or a Carolina?
I I don't want to go and jump the gun and say it's an immediate yes. I
hmm
think lots of things need to go right. Obviously, with the addition of Bo Horvat, they are looking a lot better. It just seems like they have a more confident group,
hmm
and as they should be. I mean, they're an older team in this league, and kind of what we've talked about the Islanders before we got into the trade deadline is, yeah, they're an old team. They play one style of hockey. They're not the most skillful, but they'll beat you physically and just simply. Like they don't go over the extra mile to try and beat you and get 2-on-1s and odd man rushes. I mean, they'll just play their simple game. But since making the addition of Bo Horvat, we've seen a little bit of a different type of team, I feel like. And that's for the better of the New York Islanders. I think they could potentially make a series out of the first round. I'm not going to go ahead and say that they are definitely going to be able to slay a dragon though in the first
Mhm.
round. I think it'll be an interesting series whoever they line up against though.
Yeah, absolutely. They're 7-2 in the month of March. They've been putting up a lot more goals than they've known to do. So that's sort of interesting. And the way Ilya Sorokin is playing, it's definitely a conversation. But I agree with you. I think not so much as a knock on the Islanders, but I think just more the strength of the teams that they'd have to play, whether it's
Yeah.
Boston or Carolina. It's going to be tough for them to try and knock off a team as a wild card spot. But I think it's safe to say with the way they've been playing, I think they're kind of a lock to get that first wild card spot.
I think they are too right now, just because I don't see them dipping down these last couple games in the season. They're
Mhm.
just in too good of a pace, and unless something drastic happens with like an injury, which we obviously do not root for, but like you kind of mentioned, I'm going to piggyback off that win against the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean
Huge.
that was so huge, and that game for the Islanders is circled each and every year, just because of the department of John Tavares and what it means to that
Yep.
organization and how
Mhm.
they've moved on since. And really to just lay out and get that big of a victory, I mean, it shows that these guys are dogs and they've been around. They have the old talent, or not necessarily old, but the experienced talent. They still got a really good roster throughout this entire. Lineup. And, I mean, you can look at a guy like, Pajot. I mean, for me, he's a playoff experienced player, and I think he could get hot. You still got Zach Parise there. Anders Lee is a really good player. Josh Bailey,
Mhm.
and then you got your tough guys too. I mean, that's the other thing too is once you get into those matchups against, say, a team like Boston, even though you're going to have to outscore them, you're going to have to beat them physically. And I think this team has just a little bit of everything. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens when it comes to the playoffs. But I think it's a lock that the Islanders will make it.
Certainly, and I think, going forward for them, Matt Barzell was sort of their cornerstone offensively. It'll be interesting to see. Obviously, he just signed that extension, so I don't think he's going anywhere. But it'll be interesting to see how they transition, if they do at all, maybe to a team that's less centered around Barzell and his skill set, because the way they've been playing now, I think, is the way they want to play. And I think the way they sort of envision themselves playing in the future. So I wonder how he fits into that going forward.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell right now. I think we'll know kind of when we get that first couple games into the playoffs, though,
Certainly.
and see what happens from there. But let's get in. You got anything else on the Islanders? Because I kind of like to get into your Florida Panthers here a little
Let's
bit.
get into the Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I know weeks back, you could even say a month back, this team did not look like they were going to be able to make it happen. Just in
Mhm.
the way that they were losing games in the third period, having leads, and just could not finish. But ultimately, this team started to get healthy, and it seems like certain players have started to take a lead from my perspective, and that could be a guy in like Brandon Montour.
Well,
Obviously, not a guy you look at right off the bat when you think of the Florida Panthers, but he's stepped up tremendously this year. Already at 60 points, I believe, in almost, I think, seven. Has he played 70 games? It's close,
yeah.
around that. Around that. That's outstanding for a guy that they picked up, I believe, 2 years ago. So that's number one. Number two, I mean, like I said, with getting healthy, Duclair back in the lineup, he's brought a great presence. I think
Bringing
it's
them
just
back.
more of a relieving presence just to have one of your old vets back in your lineup. If anything, it's a good locker room presence to have, and I think that's what you needed to make this transition into a playoff run, and they've done that so far.
Yeah, so if you look back earlier in the month, they started a 7-game homestand, which was sort of the defining moment of, I think, their season, their playoff run. It was March 2nd against Nashville, was the start of a 7-game homestand. They lost a game against Nashville 2-1. And I think myself and a lot of other fans of the Panthers thought that's it. That was their last straw. That was the moment where they could have seized something and they just didn't have it. And this year's kind of lost because they were so far out. They went 5-0-1 the last 6 games of that homestand and brought themselves back into it. Last night they lost a pretty rough game against Philadelphia. That's a game you definitely don't want to lose, but I think given the circumstances, it was the second night of a back to back. They're on their third string goalie, Alex Lyon, and they just had 1 minute and a half long stretch where they let up 3 goals and the whole thing just kind of faltered. Games like that happen, and I think overall you don't feel too bad about that. This Panthers team, the way they've been playing over the last month is the way the Panthers should be playing, which is high speed, attack, get activate your defense, get chances all the time. Don't sit back and play defensive hockey. Play the way they want to with their strengths and with their really the key is their defensemen, who are all offensive defensemen. When you look at Brandon Montour, who you mentioned, Gustav Forsling, Aaron Ekblad, these are all guys who excel in the offensive zone, and that's where you have to lean. I think the team has finally leaned into that in a way they probably should, away from the traditional defensive playoff style hockey. You're right, Anthony Duclair coming back, huge boost. He's not scoring so much right now. He's obviously still shaking off some rust from that long Achilles injury, but he looks like the same player, and I think that's important. He's also just a beloved player in the locker room, so having him back helps. And overall, the way they've been playing, they look like a playoff team. They do, and it's really encouraging to see they're working hard. They're outrunning their opponents, and overall, it's what they should look like with the talent they have.
Yeah, and kind of looking at the team itself, I think that they've slowly these past couple of weeks are starting to get so much from more of their depth players than their superstars. I mean,
Mhm.
if you look at like a guy like Sammy Reinhart, he is maybe not having the best stats season that he would be projected to be at, but hey, I mean he's 3 goals away from being a 30-goal scorer this season, which is phenomenal for this organization, and that's what you want coming from your depth players. But also you look at your skill guys. I mean, Matty Kachuk, one of my favorite players in the league, 96 points already this season. It's going to hit 100. Just what I'm getting at is I think this will be the last team into the wild card. I think they will get in. I think they'll beat up Pittsburgh, and we'll talk about Pittsburgh in a little bit.
Mhm.
But dude, just to see like what we originally wanted at the beginning of the season, Matty Kachuk taking the Panthers into the playoffs, I honestly think if there is going to be a wild card team to make an upset, it would be the Florida Panthers. I just like the nastiness that's throughout this team. Like I said, the depth has stepped up tremendously, and you've got an experienced goaltender. I
Yeah,
think that's what's going to come up huge, and that's what wins you series is having good goaltending. And I love Bobby down there. I think he will have a really good first round. I think this team is most likely if there will be a number one upset, it will be the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, you mentioned Sam Reinhart. He didn't have a goal in his first 13 games this season and
Yeah,
is now on pace for 30 goals. So, really great turnaround for him. Another guy you mentioned, Brandon Montour. He's going to finish as the highest scoring defenseman in Panthers history for a season. That record is currently Keith Yandle's at 62.
yeah,
He get 2 points in these last 10 games or whatever. So, it's going to be him. It cannot be underestimated how good he's been this year, or overestimated how good he's been this year.
yeah,
He's been sensational, stepping up with Mackenzie Weegar leaving the offseason, and Aaron Ekblad having a down year with injuries and just inconsistency. Brandon Montour has been our best defenseman this year. He has been excellent on both ends, too. I mean, offensively, he's been a great quarterback on the power play, and defensively, he's been solid. So you love to see it. Another guy I want to highlight is Eetu Luostarinen, who's been sort of your 3 or 4 seed. That's what he's sort of projected to be, a bottom 6 player. He has 39 points this season, 16 goals, 23 assists, and has been placed everywhere in this lineup. First line center, first line wing right now, second line, third line. He's been everywhere. All the injuries, he's been the replacement. And I think hats off to him for what he's done this year. It's been a tough year, and I think he's stepped up and filled in and made it so much better than it could have been if there was someone else in that position. And you mentioned Sergei Bobrovsky. I mean, he's done it before. He's been great down the stretch here, and he has definitely been the catalyst for some series upsets before. Think about his time in Columbus, upsetting that Tampa Bay Lightning team that had 62 wins in the first round. I could see something like that happening again from Bobrovsky, the way he's been playing this this last stretch. He's been nothing short of sensational.
yeah. And if I will say one more thing about this team, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think it just comes from your coach. What a way to like regroup your guys. I mean, I know they're experienced, so it's not much to like kind of get the best out of them late in the season. But I mean, just for where they were and what they were labeled as at the beginning of the season, I mean, that's quite a bit of pressure to be like, oh, here's such a good team. Yeah, they've dealt with some injuries, but at one point in time they weren't even close. And the transition that they've made just shows you they have a good locker room. And like I mentioned earlier in the show, I think a lot of that comes from just seeing Anthony Duclair in your locker room. Yeah, maybe not the points are up, but it's just the familiar. Just being familiar with your
Mhm.
group and what it's like to get into this time of year. So I'm going to go out and say I think the Panthers get it. But the only other team that has a real chance is the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah.
This one's kind of shocking. But it's not at the same time. I think it's more shocking just because this is probably going to be a year where you see Sidney Crosby and Malkin not in the playoffs. That's absurd for me. I think it's what since Crosby's been in the league, they've been in the playoffs.
Yep.
So this is a big I don't know. It's almost like we're starting a goodbye tour for the Penguins and Crosby and Malkin. I mean, they're just old. It's just they're still producing at a pretty decent high level. I'm pretty sure Crosby's got just below 85 points this season. Obviously not what he's been used to in the past, but I think it's just they don't have enough through their lineup and defense to sustain success late in these last couple games of the season, and they just don't have the better goaltending, I think, going forward to finish off their season. What are your thoughts?
It's tough because in the month of March they're 4-6-0, which is not with losses to Ottawa and Montreal in that stretch. They also were taken to overtime by the Columbus Blue Jackets in that stretch. And you look at them, and they have so many holes. I think particularly on defense. Jeff Petrie, the guy they were definitely counting on this year, has been out of the lineup with injuries, various injuries. Since
Yeah.
he's come back from another injury, he's just been in and out of the lineup. And I think Malkin and Letang, they're starting to show their age. They just signed those contracts, and they don't look like the same players. Obviously,
Yeah.
Sidney Crosby's still Sidney Crosby. He's well over point per game. He's sensational in every sense of the word. I am so scared to count them out because it's Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins who have won 3 Stanley
That
Cups.
might be a little bit of a fanboy coming out from you. Just nervous your team's not going to get in, dude.
Of course, I'm nervous my team's not going to get
Yeah,
in. Betting against Sidney Crosby is, I think,
it's Sidney Crosby. I get that, but it's for now. What it is, since they're a team that's not established as a top 3 in their division, for me it just comes down to depth. I mean, you may have a good team. You may have a good star player that has been the face of the NHL for at least a decade before McDavid got here. But they just don't have that young, exciting talent that's able to take over games when your top dogs aren't ready to go. A similar team that's like that right now is my team in the Buffalo Sabres. They just have a top line. If they don't have that top line, producing points, their young team cannot produce. And it's kind of the same narrative, just different story. They just got a bunch of older guys on that team, and I don't necessarily think they will have the burst to pull it through at the end of the season. So it will probably be tight. I mean, obviously we're going to see these matchups come in. I know Pittsburgh plays Colorado tonight at 8. It's a must-win game. I mean, these are all must-win games the rest of the season. Colorado, tough team to beat right now. So, I mean, they're going to have their hands full. But the one thing I will say is at the beginning of the season and throughout the entire season for Pittsburgh, they always find a way to at least get a point in matchups, whether it's getting into overtime and losing. So that's what keeps them in. But realistically, they just got to come out right and win in regulation. I don't think they're that team to do so coming into this final stretch.
These next 2 games are going to be very tough for them. They have a back-to-back with Colorado and Dallas on the road. And those 2 games are tough, and they're going to be crucial. But after that, it definitely lightens up because they have games against Washington, Detroit, Nashville. I think then they have Boston, Philadelphia, New Jersey, Minnesota, Detroit again, Chicago, and Columbus. Besides that 2-game stretch we talked about, Colorado and Dallas, what teams are you afraid of? You're afraid of Boston, New Jersey, and Minnesota. So 3 of the 10 are difficult games. That bodes well for them. That does, because if they can escape this next 2-game back-to-back with a point or 2, now you're in good shape because you have a light schedule. You don't have any teams that are playing for anything really. Like, even Boston, right? They're locked into the 1 seed. It's going to be tough to beat them because they're how good they've been. But at that point of the season, they definitely could take the night off. There's no doubt about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
I think if you're Pittsburgh, you look at that and you say, okay, well, maybe we're a little bit behind these teams that are on fire right now, but we have a chance to come back in this. Not because, we're better than them necessarily, but because our schedule is so light the rest of the way.
Yeah. And, obviously, like you've been saying, you're not counting out this team just because of the old vets they have.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of just the stars of the NHL that we grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
It's so just like hard to admit that it's like coming to an end. I don't see a scenario where just either the Islanders or the Panthers just have a bad stretch coming in just because of what they've done, what they've overcome.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh's been hanging out there for a while. Let's be
Mm-hmm.
real. So the fact that they're slowly decaying now, I personally don't see them making a flip. And but like I said, I know you're probably pretty nervous about it. We'll see what happens. That's why they play the games, buddy. That's why they
Yep.
play the games. So,
Absolutely.
but yeah, I mean, I think that kind of just wraps up. At least I think it's just those three teams.
Yep.
There's
Definitely.
everybody else in the standings. I mean, you've got the Capitals behind them. I think it's the same thing with Pittsburgh. I mean, yeah, you still got an electric player in Ovechkin and some of these older guys, Kuznetsov, whoever it may be, but they're in the same boat. They don't have that young talent that's like, in their bottom six that could be like, okay, we can at least sneak you out a game or two. Like their top players have to be on their A game to get by and win games, and I just don't think that they're there. Yeah, Ottawa, young team, they've kind of been exactly where they are right now in that fifth spot throughout the entire season, up and down, up and down. So I never really thought they would make a move.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the Sabres, dude, my gosh,
They just ran out
this
of gas, man. That's
this
all it
this
is.
pains me so much. Obviously, I'm a big fan, but it's just how it happened. Because I mean, if you look at this team right now, you take away, like I said, if you take away that top line, they're surely not there. But as of late, are some of the younger guys on second, third line started to step up, and that's when I started to believe a little bit. And I was
Mhm.
like, this team is doing so much for being the youngest team in the league, and the points they're putting up, the amount of scoring they're doing compared to the rest of the league. It it's insane. It was absolutely insane to watch, and I thought they were going to be able to pull it off. But looking back at it now, this is, I mean, you can't expect that when you're trying to rotate with three goaltenders through a season, and they're just not, the dominant athletes that you need to be a playoff team. Obviously, also, you got to mention a guy like Alex Tuck, who, I mean, a lot of people will mention that Tage Thompson is the best player on the Sabres. Realistically, I'm throwing MVP for the Sabres this year at Alex Tuck because I think he's the overall package in the sense of scoring, defense, and then just a locker room presence guy. I think once they lost him to injury for about a week, they obviously went through a terrible span, lost some games. But the one thing that I will get at, and I think this is really what happened to the Sabres. I mean, the past, since being in the playoff spot, which was probably 2-3 weeks ago. I think they're now 2-8-2 on the season.
Oh,
Defense is gone. Goaltending has been atrocious, and you're like, how could this happen? And I got a little bit of a theory. I
okay.
think I honestly think that our general manager really, really messed up the trade deadline. I think a lot of people will come out and say they're a young team. You just got to let them grow. There's no need to go out and get big fishes in the sea during trade deadline, especially for such a young team
Mhm.
that's coming up. But the way I look at it is, this is the youngest team in the NHL. And
Mhm.
for what they were doing, they were the number one scoring team in the NHL. Um, Obviously struggling with goaltending throughout the entire season. You're telling me that when it comes to the trade deadline, you're going to go out and just get Greenway and Stillman. Like that's all you're gonna do and reward your guys for such a hard working season. And not to mention that they have so much pressure of having a 10-plus year playoff drought on their shoulders. So yeah, they're kids. They're doing phenomenal. But they have so much more on their shoulders. So for what they did for 3 quarters of the season, in my eyes, is phenomenal. I mean, right now you look at like Dylan Cousins. He's 3 goals away from scoring 30 this season. He's got 58 points. I mean, that's everything you want, especially just signing him mid-season to a 7-year contract. Tage Thompson, he got hurt towards the end around the All-Star period, and his points went off a little bit. But this team is all kids. I just don't understand why Kevin Adams wouldn't go out and reward the youngest team in the NHL, who is also the highest scoring team in the NHL, by getting them some help. I just thought they would get at least a different goaltender in. That way they don't have to do the 3-man carousel, just switching personnel every single game night. And also maybe just somebody to fit into that those 2 mid lines to help these boys out, or go out and get a solid better defenseman to help with defense. I think there was a big mistake there, just not showing the support to your young team and rewarding them with some higher end talent. And I think that's honestly what lost the locker room in this past couple weeks here.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense, but I get you want to reward young players and give them a chance to compete. That's the way to build a team spirit, I guess, going forward, a winning culture. I just don't know if there's a move that made sense for Buffalo. The only thing I can think of off the top of my head that makes sense long term would have been Jacob Chikrin, right? He goes to Ottawa for a first and a second.
Yeah, but I guess my argument right back at that though is, like, obviously since Chikrin went to his hometown, I mean they probably paid a little bit less, right?
Yeah.
So that's fine. So that means Buffalo would have probably had to, maybe offer like a first round pick in there. The way I see it now though, I mean, your future's here. You have your young talent here. Even your prospects. I mean, they're already signed to you. There's no need for the Sabres to now just be like, oh, don't worry, we'll get better in the draft. It's just not necessary for them now, because their future and young talent is on the ice playing right now. So when I say, yeah, reward them, go out and reward them, because nobody thought this team would be even close to making the playoffs this year. Especially just with, and nobody thought Tage Thompson was going to be a true number one center. And just seeing what he's done and how much he's taken on his shoulders, it's ridiculous. And same thing with Dylan Cousins. So I think honestly, at the end of the day, they should have been like, yeah, we'll do whatever we can to get a guy like Jacob Chikrin. We don't have to be so picky about saving draft picks now. That's part of, I think, of getting out of this losing culture for the Sabres, they're at a point now where they can do it, is to give up on just being like, okay, well, we can get like a decent draft this year. That's not where it's at now. You got to start becoming buyers when it comes to the trade deadline. I think, like I said, though, when this happened, I think the team kind of expected Adams to go and make a move and like kind of reward them, give him something to pump up about. And not to bash on like Greenway. I mean, he's a big physical guy, but the fact that you had to bring him in and put him on your first line, I mean, he's not a first line guy. And, it would have made more sense if he's playing, bottom 2 lines, and that was his role, to be a lot better. But I think they need to go out and establish a bigger fish in the sea, just to at least get over this hump. And honestly, I think that would have been a huge victory for them this season, is just making the playoffs, and just getting over that drought. That would have changed the culture tremendously. Not very likely they're going to make it unless they win out and other teams lose. But like I said, though, I think it's just a team that is so young, and they've done so much throughout the season. And once again, no goaltending and no true defense. It's going to be tough. So, I mean, it was fun while it lasted, but ultimately not this year.
You'll feel better once you get Connor Bedard in the draft, though.
Oh, dude, if we I hope I'm eating my words right now when I say there's no need to hang on to draft picks, right?
Wouldn't that be amazing? Third line centerman, Bill Cousins.
If we got Bedard, dude.
That's it. I mean, it's curtains. 6 goals a game. You don't need any goaltending. You play 6-on-5 all game.
Literally. And honestly, it's kind of great. The only great news that's come out of Buffalo in the past like week is they did end up signing Northwestern's goalie, Devin
Devin
Levy.
Levi.
Yeah,
Hey,
I'm so happy they got him. They got him signed.
he looks good. He's got a nice player. He's a nice.
Dude, I think he'll play a couple games. I think they're gonna wait until they play Montreal because he's from there. I think that's where they'll probably want to do the debut is against one of his teams growing up. But I think realistically now for the rest of the Sabres season, you just got to look forward to your young guys finishing strong. Like I want to see Cousins get 3 more goals, get him to 30 goals. I mean, dude, that's crazy itself. I mean, if Olofsson and Cousins, I think Olofsson's got to score 4 and Cousins got to score 3, you would have 5 30-plus goal scorers on your team.
That's amazing.
And they're going to miss the playoffs. It just shows you. I mean, I think, but like I said, though, with getting Levi in there, I think just get him a couple games. That he's your future at goaltending. UPL has been struggling all season. I don't expect Anderson to be back. Well, who knows what's going to happen with Comrie, but I think when it comes to the offseason, major thing for the Sabres is just stack up on defensemen and stack up on goaltending. But I think Levi will ultimately be the real game changer. He's been dominating the college league for so long, and I think the Sabres finally got a goaltender, for the first time since Ryan Miller left us.
That Reinhart for Levy in a first trade seems to be working.
Oh, dude, that trade turned out great for
rare win-win for everyone involved. I love it.
Both sides, yeah. So I mean, we're starting to win some trades, so that's good. But yeah, realistically, other than that, though, you look at the Eastern Conference. I mean, we didn't really think Detroit was gonna do much.
Detroit was a fraud from the beginning.
Fraud from the beginning, and then the rest are pretty much dog water. No offense, but
sorry, Columbus.
Yeah, sorry, Columbus. But I mean, you just gotta say it. I mean, I've been through there myself being a Sabres fan, so you just got to accept it when it comes at you. Maybe you guys will get Bernard, but
maybe
hopefully the Sabres get him. That'd be fucking nice right there. Nice. But yeah, I mean, I think that kind of sums up. Anything else on the Eastern Conference while we're talking about it?
I think Ottawa, no, they're not ready right now, but going forward, I think they have something to keep an eye on because Stützle and Tkachuk.
Yeah, I was gonna say the other Tkachuk boy. I mean, he took a big step this year.
Yeah, solid. It's a solid core. I like them.
Yeah, I think they just got to manage, their free agency correctly, and ultimately just make sure that their prospects they have now are on the right track in developing. I think they'll be a team just like Buffalo in a couple of years to be a force to be reckoned with.
And their goalie they just brought up that shut out Pittsburgh the other day, or what was it, 47 saves?
Yep, yes sir. Yes, sir.
Maybe it's something. Maybe.
We'll see. We'll see.
All right.
Let's flip over to the Western Conference, buddy. This has turned into this is must-watch TV.
I love it.
Stretch, which I'm actually so happy because we thought it was going to be the Eastern side, but ultimately that is not the case anymore. Obviously, I'll just throw it at you right now in the wild card standings. You got Seattle at 1, Winnipeg at 2. Followed by Calgary and Nashville. St. Louis, I would say that's the cutoff. I think
that's the cutoff right there.
That's the cutoff right there. Yeah. They're at 68 points and with 70 games played. Obviously Nashville is at 78 points, so it's a solid 10-point difference there. That's the cutoff. So the interesting thing, though, is kind of just looking at the divisions, because I think if I'm correct, there can still be some changing in that 3 spots from some of the division standings here. But, just based off of what's happening right now, I mean, this is just an all-out fight going down the stretch, which I'm super pumped about.
Absolutely. I think what's really come on as of late is Edmonton taking a giant step forward with the Mattias Ekholm trade.
Yeah.
And then Colorado also putting it together in recent months. I think that's put 2 legitimate contenders into the race, and it's pushed out some teams that I consider more to be pretenders, maybe like Seattle and Winnipeg, that have now fallen into the wild card, where I think they're more aptly suited to be. Yeah, so I think that's sort of the main takeaway here is the good teams are finally playing well, and the okay teams are playing more okay.
Yeah, and I'll mention this really quick. I'm going to go ahead and say Colorado and Edmonton are a lock at their 3 positions in the
Yeah.
division. The
Mhm.
reason why I'm going to say that is, I mean, they've got an outstanding road record. At least it's a lot better than their home records, which is actually kind of surprising.
Weird.
Obviously, we know Colorado went through some injuries this season, so maybe that's what has to do with it. Edmonton, I mean, dude, just I will not count Connor McDavid out to literally single-handedly take over the last 10 games they have remaining, or however it is, just to get in and be that 3 spot. So I think there's a solid lock there. I think they could potentially catch maybe Los Angeles and maybe flip. They're both at 71 games. I
4
think
points back.
Edmonds 4 points back. Yeah, so it's possible. It's up for grabs. We'll see what happens. I mean, that whole division's pretty tight, at least the Pacific.
Mhm.
Well, actually, all of them are. I'm pretty sure in
They're
the
all
West,
tight.
they're all within a game or two. So
Yep.
lots of things can be moved around here. But if we're really looking at those 4 bottom teams that I was getting at, Seattle, Winnipeg, Calgary, and Nashville,
Yeah.
man, we've got a lot going on here. And honestly, we already know that early on in the season, the big Winnipeg guy, they're my
Yeah.
Western team. They're not looking hot whatsoever.
Mhm.
Whatsoever. Hellebuck has not been playing well at all.
Really weird.
And just for a team that I thought, I mean, they have depth. I mean, yeah, once again, they don't have like that true guy that just take over a game whenever needed. But I just thought depth wise, they'd be like a solid lock to at least make the playoffs. And right now, they're 2 games in hand on Seattle, who are 2 points ahead of them. And they've got 3 games in hand on Nashville, who's, not that far away. So
That's the thing.
that's
He's
the scary
very
thing is like,
concerned.
what can Nashville do? And Calgary, they have the veteran presence.
Mhm.
I would say, at least getting at least from your Panthers trade back. But other than that, man, I mean, I'm kind of lost when it comes to looking at this final last 2 spots for the wild card in the West. What are your thoughts?
Well, breaking it down, I think Seattle we can lock. They've been good all year. They've been consistent. They have lots of depth, goal scoring from everywhere. Defense is solid. I think Seattle is fine where they are. I think,
Hmm.
yeah,
I
I
might,
think
I might, I might debate you on that, but go
we
ahead.
can talk about it. Between Winnipeg, Calgary, and Nashville, I immediately would take away Calgary. I think they're where the Panthers were a week ago
I'd
or
agree
two
with
weeks
that.
ago. But they just haven't put together. I think there's a lot of tension between their coaches and their players. Sutter and Huberto have not been on the same page all year, and I don't think that's going to change in these last couple weeks. So I would take Calgary out of it. I could be wrong. I don't see them getting it. So between Winnipeg and Nashville, it's interesting because Nashville is 5 points back with 3 games in hand.
Yeah,
So, and they've been playing so much better after they've made these trades. After they get a first for Ekholm and a first for from Tampa, blanking on his name that they traded to Tampa, Tanner Janot.
yes,
Okay, first for him, they get all these guys. Now Phil Tomasino gets more ice time, and Phil Tomasino looks excellent for them. So if I'm Nashville, I feel great. This is house money you're now playing with. You're moving into a new phase, and this new phase looks great because you have these young players that are stepping up, and they're catchable. But if you put my feet to the fire, I still think Winnipeg takes it because of the talent they have up front. They just have too much star talent. We talk about Connor, Scheifele, Ehlers, Morrissey, Ken Hellebuck, you know, and I've been critical about Winnipeg and their one-way players all year,
yeah,
but I think wild card 2, they're good enough to get wild card 2 from these other 2 teams. If
yeah,
it comes down to it, they just have too much talent. You hope Hellebuck can rebound because he's just such a good goaltender.
yeah.
You think he's going to do it? I do.
Yeah, especially for a guy who's won the Vezina in the past. I think, he's just I I'm not going to count out Winnipeg, even though I don't like their chances right now.
Hmm.
I'm going to stick with them. They are going to be that final wild card spot, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Going back to Seattle, though,
Okay.
here's the thing. I'm nervous for them based on the teams they play for the next 3 games in a row, because they play the Predators twice in a row here. They play tomorrow, and then they play them Saturday, and they're all at Nashville.
Yeah,
And that's the thing. You got a hungry Nashville team right now. I think Nashville will be able to. I think they could easily walk away with 3 points, maybe even 4 in
that's
those 2 games
good
right
too.
there. Right there, that's an immediate flip. And then Seattle is just, they're. I mean, I know they're a really good team. They're a very physical team. I've talked about that all season long. Then they go out and they play the Wild, who have been an outstanding team this year.
Yes, Philip Gustafson and net has been excellent.
Excellent. I personally think Seattle's in trouble for the next 3 games. And once that happens, if other teams capitalize, that's already going to be great for Nashville because they've got 4 points against the team that they're chasing. And
That's
then
huge.
ultimately it comes down to what can Winnipeg do?
Yeah.
Once again, I think Calgary's out of it. I think Winnipeg will be able to get some nitty-gritty games here. I think, if anything, if they lose, I think they'll be a team that gets into overtime. I think Hellbuck will be able to get it together, at least make this at this final push. I'm a little nervous with Seattle though, just based on these next 3 games. If you look at, let me see, I can pull up. They've been on a little bit of a tear. I mean,
They're good, man.
they are good. They've lost to some key teams though. Some teams that are in the playoff hunt or in the playoffs right now. You can mention they've lost to, who was it? The Oilers. I know they beat the Stars, but previously had lost to the Stars a
Lost
couple
three,
days
2 or 3.
prior. And they're kind of keeping it close in some of these in games against some of these lower end teams. All it takes is 1 goal, and I think it'd be, not in their favor. Now, they do have a pretty easy middle stretch. They play teams like the Coyotes
That's what I
and
was gonna get.
Chicago and, the Vancouver Canucks, but they finished their season playing Vegas twice. And I know Vegas is going to be extremely hungry. Obviously, a wonderful addition in getting Jonathan Quick over there, which, I did call also, by the way.
You
But,
did.
I think, like I said, if Seattle gets in trouble in these next 3 games, even if they're going to be the favorites for the rest of those middle pack games, if they don't do their job and then they finish on a horrible stretch those last 2 games against Vegas, I could honestly see a team like Nashville and Winnipeg being those final 2 spots versus Seattle.
So yes, these next 3 games are going to be huge. You have to at least split if you're Seattle with the Nashville Predators because I mean,
Well, if anything, you look at it in the different perspective of the Predators. They need 4 points.
they do.
So they're giving you everything.
I mean,
Right now, Seattle's just holding on. Like,
yeah.
it's, if anything, Predators have nothing to lose. I mean, they do, but like they have to go all out in these 2 games. Plus, they're at home in
Yeah.
Smashville.
And you got to feel good about the way their vibes are with this young team coming up. You got to feel good about it. But I mean, if Seattle wins this, you're eliminating Nashville right there. They're done. I think right there. So
Oh yeah.
Nashville
If
team.
that's the case, then I think it's a lock between the 1-2 punch. Unless, I mean, then again, if Seattle wins those 2 in a row, I mean, they can move up in the 3rd spot. But
Maybe, but
we'll see what happens. I just think I'm going to go out on a limb and just say I don't think that they are going to have it for these next 3 games coming up, and I think that's going to show them their true colors, even in those mid games I was mentioning after that. So,
yeah.
This is everything you want, though. This is
Yeah.
everything you want these last couple games, these matchups. And obviously, we're not really used to these schedules like this, where you're playing teams twice in a row this late. Especially, I mean, to be in Nashville for 3 days
It's
because
weird.
of the
Really
it's odd. We don't see this. It's just because of the expansion and just how things are operating now.
Yeah.
I think it's exciting hockey though. It's literally what we're
Well,
watching. It's
mini
our
playoff
playoff
series
series.
almost.
Their playoff series.
There's going to be playoff intensity, but that stretch you're talking about, I think it's important They play Arizona 3 times.
I know.
3 times, and Chicago and Winnipeg. So,
And Vancouver.
Vancouver. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Vancouver. Yeah.
Just okay. Like playing a division opponent 3 times in whatever a week and a half is really, really silly.
Yeah.
But regardless, that's what it is. I think even if they falter against Nashville, which would give Nashville, I think, the momentum to take 2, they still probably have enough easy games that they can recover. That's what I'm banking on, just with how good they've been this year, how balanced the way Matty Beniers have played and the way Jared McCann has played. I trust them.
I can see that. I can definitely see that. 100%. Also, too, I mean, you gotta think Nashville. The one thing about Nashville for me though is obviously they're not a dominant team, but for some reason, for me, they can come away with some big wins down the stretch. And I think if it's as long as they're at their home rink, that crowd's gonna be ruckus. It's gonna be hard to deal with. I think it's just a feeling thing. And let's be real. I mean, if you lose even just 2 games in a row at this stretch of the season, that can throw your whole locker room out the board.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter how good your team is. It doesn't matter. So that's kind of where I'm getting at. And let's see, I'm going to pull up Nashville's schedule. I know it's pretty hard down the stretch here. I think they play a bunch of Eastern teams that are fighting for spots too. Let's see, they've got Seattle. Then they get Toronto at home. Then they go to Boston. They go to Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Then they play the Blues. They play the Stars, Vegas, Hurricanes, Jets, Calgary.
A lot of good teams.
They're playing a lot of good teams, but a majority of their games are at home.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And that's
a tough arena.
Very tough arena to get a win out in Smashville. Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm going at there. And then if you look at Winnipeg too, I mean, they're same boat. I mean, they are on the road, I think, a lot more, but they play the Ducks, then they play the Kings, they play the Sharks, they play Detroit, the Devils, Calgary, the Predators, obviously. They play the Sharks again. Finish off the last 2 games are against Minnesota and against Colorado. So they're going to have their hands full too, but I just think they're a team that they've been around before. I think they'll be able to make the push. I guess I'm going bold move here, and I'm just going to say Seattle's not going to make it.
And you think Nashville's going to overtake them?
I think Nashville moves in. I think Winnipeg will hold off. So
I was looking. I was thinking, did we undervalue Calgary with all their talents? And I don't think we did, because they have the least amount of wins out of any of these teams. They have 15 overtime losses, which is why they're in this race.
Yeah.
And that's tied for the most in the league with San Jose.
Yeah, they're not going to make a flip of a script and just be like, okay, we're going to win a regulation.
32 wins on the season. It's way more dire than even it seems when you look at the standings. They just don't play with each other. I mean, Tyler Toffoli is their leading scorer. Tyler Toffoli is a good player, but if he's your best offensive player, you're in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I don't really know what else to say with Calgary. I think they just kind of went through a really interesting offseason. And I think at the end of the day, I say this true enough. The Eastern Conference is stacked. Western Conference, even though it's not stacked and everything's open, it's still just that much harder, in my opinion, to be good, because everything's changing 24/7, and that means everybody's playing to move up a spot every single night. And when you get that down the stretch, I think that's a lot harder versus a stacked different conference where teams are already set and put, and they're like, all right, we can't move anywhere in the standings, so let's just take it easy, get ready for the playoffs. This is going to be wild to watch the West, these last 10, 12 games each team's got.
It is. I'm excited for it. And, hopefully it is a 4-team race that it seems. But, I mean, you look at Calgary. Markstrom went from being a Vezina finalist last year to not even cracking a .900 save percentage.
Yeah.
Huberdeau was 115 points last year. He's going to barely crack 50 this year. Nazem Kadri coming off a career year. He's just at 50. It's really kind of like dire almost. I wonder what they do. They're locked into all those long contracts now, and it's going to be a struggle to make the playoffs.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%.
Maybe they prove us wrong. Maybe it is actually a 14 race. I don't see it. They don't win games.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, I mean, shit. I mean, I'm trying to give them like some type of positivity going in here, but I just don't
Good defense
see it.
for it.
Just based off of what every other team is doing, I don't think they have it in them.
They don't. Great shot suppression team,
And
but
don't get me wrong. I mean, I would have loved to see them in. I always enjoy seeing them do well. Just at least having a good series. It's always an electric home playoff game for them too. So it's gonna suck if we ultimately don't see them in the playoffs this year. Quick question though. So you're gonna go with what, Seattle and Winnipeg as your finalists
I
for
am.
wild card?
Yep.
Let me ask you this then. So if the standings were to stay where Vegas is number 1 and then Dallas is the second 1 seed,
Yeah.
do any of these wild card teams have the opportunity to make an upset?
I think Winnipeg does against Vegas if
Yeah.
Hellebuyck
Yeah.
returns to form.
I agree.
If and only if, yes.
I think Seattle, if they do get in, and I already told you I don't think they're going to get in. I think they're one and done easily.
I do agree with that. They've been a nice story, but they're too young and their goaltending is too inconsistent.
Yep.
Beat Dallas, who's been just sensational.
Oh, Dallas and or if for some reason Seattle ends up being the 2, and they have to play Vegas. I think Vegas and Dallas, they have the bigger bodies. And I know Seattle's physical, but it's more just the experience that they have. And when they turn it up a notch, when we come to playoff hockey, it won't even be close, in my opinion. But honestly, if you want to, real quick, I mean, looking at those divisions, do you think Vegas and Dallas holds the 1 seed going forward?
That is a good question. I do think they will. I mean, you look at it, Los Angeles is right behind Vegas.
Yeah.
I don't think I would trust Los Angeles to catch them as close as they are. It's just they have a lot of overtime losses, so Vegas is in a lot more games. And actually, Minnesota, with the way they've been playing, might catch.
I was about to say, we got to talk about that Central Division because literally, all right, so Dallas and Minnesota are tied at 90 points each with 71 games. Colorado has 2 games in hand. It is only 1 game back.
Right.
Oh, Colorado could jump into that 1 seed.
And then they're right back where we thought they were.
Exactly. And they've been playing hot as of late. So
yeah, they've been really good.
I believe in their last 10, they're I know they have 1 overtime loss. Let me look it up. I'm gonna cheat, guys. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Let's see here. Colorado's last 10, 7-2-1.
Wow.
Minnesota's last 10, 7-1-2.
Same thing.
Dallas last 10, 6-3-1.
I
think we're gonna see some change here.
We might see some change. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just saying, honestly, I'm gonna go out and say it right now. I know I shit on you, Colorado fans, earlier in the season. Said you guys were done. You guys are gonna win your division this year. I'm gonna say it. You guys won your division. Congrats.
According to Money Puck, or no, not Money Puck, Tankathon, Colorado has the 3rd easiest strength of schedule remaining.
Oh, come on. Yeah, sign them up. They're the 1 seed. And if that's the case.
But Dallas does have the 4th.
Yeah, no. I'm still going to take Colorado.
2 games against.
I would assume Colorado and Dallas play each other.
They do play once.
Where's the game?
Let's check.
If you say Colorado, it's a seal that Colorado wins the division.
Colorado, Minnesota. It's in Colorado.
Do they play Dallas?
Oh yeah, they do play Dallas in Colorado.
Oh, dude, it's set in stone. It's over. It's over.
Colorado plays San Jose twice, Anaheim twice, and Arizona twice. So yeah, I think that's that.
And they're 7-2-1 their last 10. Oh, give me a break, dude. Let's see. Dude, they're on a 6-game win streak too right now.
Crazy.
I mean, yeah,
I
dude.
think we kind of forgot in the course of this year that Colorado won the Cup last year, and
Yeah,
they're the best
yeah.
team by far. So
Wow, we
yeah,
are a bunch of morons.
I
Holy
think yeah,
smokes. Sorry, guys, for wasting your time here. But all right, so if that's the case, boom, throw Colorado up. I mean, let's see. Also, to oh, real fun fact here. Win streaks for those 4 wild card teams we were talking about. They're all on 1 game win streaks. So a lot of inconsistency
oh
for
yeah,
that bottom 4. Let's look at the last 10 for those teams too. Seattle is 6-3-1 their last 10. Winnipeg 5-4-1. Calgary 5-3-2, and Nashville is 5-3-2 as well. But like I said, Nashville plays a lot of home games down the stretch here, which I like. So I think they will make that bump up. But yeah, I mean, I don't think. Yeah, it's not safe to say Dallas or Minnesota are going to be your 1-2. I think Colorado will probably overtake that now.
yeah. I think that's fair.
But if that's the case, yeah, I don't think anybody who plays Colorado round 1 will beat them. So
Give Dallas a little bit of credit. They do have the 4th easiest strength of schedule remaining. 1 game against Chicago, game against Philadelphia, Arizona, Vancouver, 2 against St. Louis, and then 1 against Detroit.
who's that kid for Dallas too that we did that player profile on? I'm forgetting his name.
Jason Robertson.
Oh, dude, I love me some
What a
Jason
player.
Robertson. What a player, man. I'm excited to watch him in the playoffs too.
Yeah.
It'll be dope. I'm down
Be
for
great.
it. Yeah, man. So I guess that kind of covers up our Western and Eastern Conference playoff hunt slash division hunt. I guess we made it towards the end there. Got anything else for the people?
I wonder if how much Carolina hurts with this Andrei Svechnikov injury. Terrible, terrible stuff that he went when he tears ACL.
Yeah.
So he's done for the year.
Yeah.
That sucks. Andrei Svechnikov is great.
Okay, so I'm looking back at it now. Obviously, Boston's gonna be the 1 seed.
Maybe New Jersey overtakes them. I don't know if they're going to be like that good, as good as they have been. I'm not sure.
You know what I'm hoping for right now, actually?
Mm.
I need the Panthers to get to the number 1 wild card spot and then just take Carolina out in the first round.
I hope so. I do.
I think that makes more sense.
I don't think they'd beat Boston, but they could beat either New Jersey or Carolina.
I think if like for dealing with
You're right.
juggernauts, Panthers are the team to do it.
Yeah, they have the bodies to do it. If it comes down to that, they have the best
goaltending too. Yeah, goaltending too.
You know, Bob, playoff Bob, he's different.
Love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
For
All
sure.
right. Well, I think that's going to end our show here.
Mhm.
Thank you guys for tuning in. We're officially back. And let's be real, we're going to have some serious, shows coming up, especially when the playoffs start.
Oh, yeah.
Who knows, dude? Maybe we'll have to do another live stream during one of maybe a playoff Panthers game, potentially.
That'd be great.
It'd be awesome.
We got to make the playoffs first, but
Baby steps.
Baby steps.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time.